Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So my name is Charity Dean. I'm the director of our Civil Rights, Inclusion, and Opportunity Department. And I am so excited to have you all here today as we close out Black History Month. We've been doing a series of events this month, really trying to make sure that we are staying committed to our mission to make sure that there are opportunities for everyone in the city of Detroit. And so our hope today is that you will make connections. And so you'll see that we have panels and we have resources, but we really want you to have time to connect with each other. We hope that you will make connections. We hope that you will learn from the panel. We hope that you will be engaged and really get resources that can help your business thrive in the city. First I would like to thank our Deputy Director, Ariel Johnson, for putting this entire event on. There she is right there. She's coming to our department and brought a vision in life, and so we're so excited about today. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you the mayor of this great city, Mayor Mike Dunn.
Because the knowledgeable folks are coming up next, but what is happening in this city is there are an awful lot of Black entrepreneurs that are driving recovery. You might be hiring 2 people at a time, you might be 10 people, you might be 15 people, but there's an enormous amount of success, and it doesn't get covered in the media. So you saw my speech the other night. I think I highlighted probably 20 or so Black business owners in the city, and I just ran into somebody on the way in who complained that I didn't mention them, so I probably put them to the top of the list next year. But what I'm really looking for, again, is to tell a story. Can Detroit be the city where Black entrepreneurs know I can come here, I can get support from Motor City Management, I can get support on zoning, I can get support from the Entrepreneurs of Color Fund, I can get support from the Strategic Neighborhood Fund and Invest Detroit, I can get support from networking events from CRIO. All of these things working together, can we create an atmosphere where people come from around the country to say, Detroit is the center for Black entrepreneurial success. And so we've taken some steps in that direction, but of course we have the easy job, starting a company and growing a company, and dealing with all the challenges. That's the harder job. And so hopefully you're going to hear from a few folks today who have done it well, and you get a chance to meet each other. And I just wanted to come by and say I wish you good luck, and I hope next year when we're making lists of who we're going to highlight, I get to meet a number of you. And I'll turn it back to Charity.
Thank you. And so I think we have Edwina King, who is Councilman Tate. This is his district. He is a huge partner for making this event happen, and so I'm going to turn it over to his policy analyst, Edwina King.
Thank you, Charity. So first, I'd like to extend a huge thank you to the CRIO department for inviting us to speak at this event. And so in District 1, we typically say, good morning, District 1. So on behalf of the 18 square miles that represent District 1, in addition to the 600 plus faith-based institutions and businesses, both small and major chains, as well as the 100,000 residents that call this place home, we welcome you to our district. Again, on behalf of Council Member Tate, who unfortunately could not attend today, he sends his regards, and the Discover D1 team, which represents our small business component of District 1 and the Office of Council Member Tate, we welcome you. And for those, especially our budding businesses, home-based, if you're looking for a place to live, work, and play, we invite you to set up your roots here in District 1. And again, thank you, welcome, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you. And I think we're going to go straight into the panel, Ariel. Yep. So I'm going to turn it over to Ariel because she knows what's happening.
Awesome. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. We're so excited to be here. So I'm going to invite my panelists. We're going to get right into it. So I'm going to invite up Portia Powell. She's with Chemical Bank. I'm not going to read off any bios or anything right now. They're going to tell you about themselves, and we're going to play a game, too. So I've got Brian Mckinney with Guyana and Eric Thomas with the City of Detroit. Okay. So it's not super early. We want to. I know it's girl power over here. We good. We good. We good. Yes. No, we good. So it's kind of cold outside, right? And so we're gonna wake up. I'm gonna make sure that our panelists are awake and able to answer all of the questions that we have for them today. So we're gonna play a little bit of rapid fire first to get us started. So the way that we're gonna play rapid fire today is I'm going to say one word, and my panelists are going to respond with the first word that comes to mind. And all in unison, right? So it takes some rhythm, right? So if I say apples, y'all say oranges at the same time as soon as I say it back, right? Y'all got that?
think so.
Eric, you look a little confused.
I cuss a lot.
Oh, no, don't cuss. This is censored. All right.
All right.
Are you guys ready? So test, apples.
Oranges.
Oranges.
Okay, see, you was a little slow, Brian. Okay, all right, so here's the first one, money.
Power.
That was slow, Brian. Okay, so they said power. Equity.
Inclusion.
My
Did
brain
you have
don't
one?
work this fast.
Your brain don't work that fast? All right, black.
Excellence.
Excellence,
I
okay.
hate that term.
Taxes.
Gotta pay it.
She said, uh-oh.
Inevitable.
She said, uh-oh. Okay, and strategy.
Necessary.
Necessary, what did you say? Portia. Okay, perfect. All right. So I'm going to have you guys introduce yourselves. Tell us your name and what you do, both for our jobs that we do day to day and your side hustle or your entrepreneurship background or whatever that is. And then what is your favorite and least favorite part of crafting your business strategy?
Wow.
Whoa. Eric, you up first?
Lord Jesus.
Okay.
So I've been a full-time business owner for the last 12 years, and then Mayor Duggan abducted me into the city. He's still over there. So since Mayor Duggan tripped me into a job, I now work at the city of Detroit as well. But I also own a storytelling agency, so now I'm the chief storyteller of the city of Detroit. And I own a storytelling agency called Saga that supports mostly nonprofits and municipalities and community organizations to connect with people. What is the most difficult part of the business strategy?
What is your favorite and least favorite part of crafting your strategy?
I would say the favorite part is, you know that feeling when you're really bad at something and you just feel like you're an idiot? And then one day you're doing it and it starts clicking and all of a sudden you're like, I am the smartest person in the world. That is my favorite part, just knowing, because after that feeling, now I know I can do any and everything. And I was not a business person. I'm an artist. And so I just feel like this is not for me. I never wanted to be in business. It's actually a terrible idea, and it hurts every day. But now I know that I can really do anything that I want to do. And now in this new role with the city, I've taken all the things from the last 12 years of becoming an entrepreneur, and I'm taking it into the city. And hopefully people don't hate me because I move real quick and aggressively. So.
Perfect. Portia?
My name is Portia Powell. I am a lifelong banker. I've been in banking since I became an adult. My first semester home from college, I took a job as a teller, and I have worked my way through corporate banking for the last 17 years. I now oversee a division of the bank who manages municipalities. So all of my clients are government agencies and entities in 7 different states. One of my largest clients here would be the city of Detroit, as Chemical Bank is the official bank of the city of Detroit. So I get to manage money and investments for government agencies. Outside of that, I do real estate development and own property throughout Metro Detroit. And just recently, I am in a process now of opening a lounge on the east side, Good Vibes Lounge. Thank you.
Go get you some vibes.
So that's a whole new, venture and avenue for me. But I've been, I became an entrepreneur not by design. In my mind, I always was looking for ways to make extra money and extra income. So I grew up with a single mom, and she was very strategic in her money. So when I started buying houses, we actually started doing it together, but it was really just a way to create additional income. I didn't realize I was an entrepreneur at the time. I was just trying to make some additional money. And then when I started to realize the power of ownership and what having equity could do for you, that just created additional opportunities. I think the thing I love most about creating a business strategy is creating something and actually seeing that idea become alive and a real thing and something tangible that you can touch, and then looking back and saying, hey, I actually did that. Every time I drive by the lounge, like, I'm amazed that it's actually happening. But the downside of that is I'm a person who gets imposter syndrome a lot. And I'll get in a position and I'm like, I can't do this. Who am I to think that I could do this? I can't run a bar. I can't do these things. Or, when you start trying to elevate and reach that next level, there's a lot of doubt. And so when you're strategizing and creating a plan, you will second guess yourself. People will tell you what you can and can't do. People will limit you. And I think that is probably the hardest part about strategizing, because in doing that, you have to have conversations with other people, and those people will doubt you, and then make you doubt yourself. So then you're standing there and it's like, okay, do I really want to do this? And so I've done that, over the course of a year, and getting this bar open, that I've been really ready to walk away. And it's mostly just because of doubt that I've inflicted in myself, or that I've heard other people say. The first thing people will tell you is all the bad things about owning a bar. And then you have to take a step back and you ask them, like, have you owned a bar? Like, how can you tell me all of these cons when you've never, done something? But, it's a real thing. And you keep me up at night because, I have a lot personally vested. So in trying to create a strategy, I say that's the hardest part is turning down the noise, because there's a lot of things that you'll start to hear and echo. And if you let those things get in your way, it's going to deter you and stop your path.
I got a lot out of that myself. Wow. So I'm Brian Mckinney, the CEO and founder of Gayanga. I think my job actually is to solve problems. So my background is computer engineering. I'm a hacker by passion, and I have fell into a space of solving the problem around access to impact, right? And so looking at data, historically, African Americans have been excluded from participating in infrastructure or development in a large-scale way. And that really bothered me. Like, growing up in the city, I used to be really enthusiastic about, you felt like you could do anything, right? You saw people of color in every facet of life, and I think that fundamentally shaped me in thinking I could, literally do anything. And so when I looked at infrastructure, pivoting from tech, it was a lot was being said about the lack of black and inclusion in Silicon Valley and tech. And so when moving from there, I saw in infrastructure an even greater disparity, in that black and brown traditionally meant, by and large, having to be the front-facing aspect of a business and not really having any equity or ownership and control. And so that leads me to my favorite part of strategy is the actual long-term vision and the incremental steps, seeing it through. And so my journey was, I know it's going to take a finite time length to get there, but I was really challenged by the fact of saying, why can't, when you look at freeway projects or large-scale projects, there's never a black company that is actually the contractor, right? We're relegated to very small roles, and there's just this status quo, and that bothered me, being from here and saying, well, who says that so? The least favorite part is, to echo Portia's sentiments, is the noise, and is when you're going at entrepreneurship, you're often doing things that no one thinks is possible. Oftentimes, you're not going to think it's possible. And part of it is correct, right? For me, I participated in a minority contractors fair. 300 people participated. I was the only one who made it through to get a license. And the only reason I think I made it through is because I didn't know how difficult it was. I was naive, right? But that journey, that step was just, figuring it out. And so the least favorite part is you're going to be, it's very alone, right? Like, there are times when you have to sacrifice from family, from passions or commitments, and it's a delayed benefit, right? You may, for a very long time, not see the result. You're in planting season and you don't have the harvest. And so that alienation, that isolation, That to me is the most difficult part of it.
Awesome. So you talked about solving problems, right? And so any entrepreneur, whether you are a trucking company or construction or making smoothies, you're solving some type of problem, right? And this is something that's talked about a lot more so in the nonprofit space and in the social space, but it applies to everybody. And so kind of starting in the beginning of your strategy is making sure you're solving the right problem for the right customer in the right space, right? So you're not going to come to the Brightmoor community, right, trying to give something that you know that community is not necessarily ready for. So we talk a lot about data and metrics, and it sometimes can be, especially as women, sometimes we shy away from that if we're not familiar with it. But explain some ways of how we can make sure that we're solving the right problem. A lot of time people say, oh, I'm passionate about painting or I'm passionate about cooking, so I started this company and I put it right here. But there's no strategy behind why you put your business in this space or why you are starting your business. So you need to understand your why and is this business even necessary? Or are you solving an effective problem? So what are some ways that you guys have done that in your spaces?
Yeah, so I mean that's a great way to look at it is like when you're looking at a value prop is to look at a pain point. So in tech we talk about the problem I'm solving, the business that I'm building, how painful is the problem and my business being that solution. And so when you look at large scale successful things, if you go something as common as McDonald's, at some point in the turn of the 20th century, the problem of most people were previously, getting all home cooked meals. And then as they should, as more diversity was happening in the workplace and women were beginning the journey of being fully represented in work, there was this need to find fast food, right? And so that pain point of, can I get something to eat? Granted, there's a whole side of say it's unhealthy, but that solved that pain point. And you have to ask, when you are solving something that causes a consumer or customer pain, then you're generally gonna be able to make money even while you figure it out. Right. And I think that is also what it does is it allows you as an entrepreneur. Sometimes we get so caught up into what we're doing and believing in it, and it's like groupthink almost to just think, like I'm so in love with it that if we step out and say, is this really a problem, right? Is this really a pain, or is this just a passion? Because you can have a passion and not solve a problem. Yep. And so it's a sweet spot, and sometimes the pain point is delayed and it isn't really isn't as magnified. But I think that is my experience is where you find a sweet spot. Ours was that there was this huge infrastructure opportunity as they were rebuilding Detroit, and there was a disproportionately large number of people of color in that community, and they were not being represented in the actual space. And so that was a pain point that I connected with. And then it's like also a pain point of what's really important for me being from Southwest Detroit is being able to see people that look like me as kids grow up, right? Like I didn't see people that look like me in a lot of spaces in a community, in a neighborhood aspect. And so being able to provide that, so that was something I was trying to solve, and I'm sure they have different pain points.
I think what's really, really important is that you identify who your clients are, who your customers are, because then it'll help you to figure out what problem you're solving. When I first, got into real estate, I just heard it was a cool thing. Like I own houses. And then when I started owning those houses and looking at what I wanted to do, I tried to figure out who were those houses for. Because growing up, my mother actually was a homeowner. So for me, I thought everybody was a homeowner. Until you get in this market and you realize they're not, and there's a huge need for affordable housing, and people want, a decent place to stay. So then when I started looking for houses to buy, I tried to do that with making sure that it's a house that I can still provide at an affordable value. Most of my tenants have been long-term. Most of them don't leave. And if they do, it's because I've helped them become homeowners. I have 2 tenants right now in the process of buying the houses from me that they've lived in for the last 5 years. So I always try to make sure that I'm giving something back and helping them reach that, next level of whatever it is. Because at the end of the day, I've made my money, in rent over the last 5 years from this tenant. And now for them to be able to buy this house for me. But I tried during this process to keep them so that whenever I decided to leave, they had an option. And both of those tenants at that point are now able to become homeowners and purchase the house that they've lived in for me, and really their house. They've had that house for the last 5 years. They know more about it, than I do. So 2 tenants will now be, homeowners. So when I'm looking into new houses to purchase or things like that, can I offer it at an affordable value, at a rate somebody will be able to stay? Because it's more beneficial for me and them. You don't want to have to keep looking for a new tenant every year. You don't want to have to evict people because they can't afford to stay here. But if you're buying a house that's extremely expensive, then it's hard for you to do that. You have to charge more of a premium. So I try to focus on housing that is beneficial for me and, for the tenant. And even now in this new venture, of the lounge, I literally have canvassed almost every bar on the east side. And I start talking to people who visit these bars and ask them, what would they be looking for, in a new bar? What could I bring different? And then for the people that are there, asking the residents, where do you hang out at? And when you have a neighborhood where everybody is going outside of that neighborhood to have a good time, then that means that neighborhood is missing something. So originally what I started to do almost a year ago when I bought it, it's taken me this long because I've had to change that entire strategy. How can I bring an experience to this neighborhood that the people can enjoy so that they don't have to always go downtown to spend their money? They can come right into their own neighborhood and have a decent establishment that they feel, comfortable in. So it's been a lot more expensive. It's taken me a lot more time, but I had to literally figure out who was I trying to serve and what are they looking for? Because what my ideas were may not have worked for the people who are actually going to come and patronize this facility. So I had to literally take a step back and see what people wanted and how I could provide a solution to that problem.
I get all my business advice from memes. No, actually, there was a meme that just brings to mind. So I got to keep it 100. Everything ain't got to be a business, dog. And I think we need to start there. Sometimes you do a thing, you do not have to sell it. Stop letting people convince you to go into business because you make shirts or whatever. Like, if you don't have the volume, it's not a business. I mean, that's, it's a hobby that pays for itself, which is cool. But when you're not, and I'm like, here's the horrible news. If you're not grossing 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 grand, it's you eating, and that's cool. But you hear a lot of people, I think this is to the previous point, there are a lot of people who ain't never did nothing gonna tell you what you're not gonna do. I have not run into a person who's achieved a great deal who didn't look at me and say, how can we make this work? I'm gonna point out Sylvester in the crowd, he's over there. Sylvester is good for being like, okay, brother, what we gonna do? Seem like you're having a hard time.
Say it just like that.
What we gonna do, right? Like, it's not like I'm not gonna give you not one of these big old checks I got. But we gonna talk through how to either get you a bag or you gonna have to do something else. And that's real. That's a real business conversation. One of the real conversations that you're gonna learn in business, you gotta stop being afraid of money. Our community is terrified of conversations about money. You can say everything loud, but the cost of your service. Oh yeah, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna help every single person on the east side get a pair of socks. It's gonna cost me $17. I would like to charge you 15 cents. What are you doing? The money part is the whole business part. Everything else is the hobby part. Right? And so when I think about what you do when you go into business, right? When you decide it's a business, because at some point you have to decide is it a business or decide it is not a business. And that's not bad news. The other part about this is you have to decide when to pull the plug on a thing and move to the next thing. Just because you're doing well doesn't mean that it's working, right? Because you're making money and keeping money, two totally different things. I made $1 million and spent $1.1 million, right? I had a homie tell me, a real good business mentor that most people know. She said, I had $1 million in my bank account and owed $1.2 million. So you didn't have no money. So there are some misconceptions that we have because like the number 1 million feels so good. Everybody up here has seen $1 million, right? Like you've seen it, right? Like, and how fast does it go? You have aimed at $1 million. It was like your life goal. I'm gonna sell marbles and make $1 million. And you make it and you look back at it like, where did it go? The real question about business is we need to start having real conversations about it. what is a margin, right? Like, who do I need to talk to give me good advice? What is good advice and what is fear? Some people are afraid for you. And the people telling you not to do stuff are not bad people. They're just afraid for you. So you can't look at them like they're bad people. You just have to say, wow, this person hasn't had the experience and they're afraid. Let me go find someone else who's overcome that fear and help me get around that obstacle. And so that's been something that I had to do for a long time because I grew up where my grandma raised me on $600 a month. So when I told my grandma I made $1,000, she thought that was like the most money of all time. My grandma spent my entire childhood telling me that nobody has any money. And everybody who looks like they have money is pretending. Everyone. Her daughter is a wealth coach. She lives in a multi-million-dollar house that we were inside of. I said, Grandma, don't they have money? She said, nah, they probably struggling. In this is the Herculean task of coming from low income, coming from being a minority, coming from being in a historically disinvested community to try to do something that people haven't seen before. The people who are telling you to pause are not bad people. They're just afraid for you. And so you have to love them through that, but then find someone who can. So that's kind of like my advice on that whole deal.
Yeah, that was amazing. And I wanted to share with you guys a lot of my background is in the hospitality industry, so a lot of my references goes back to hospitality. And so when you go back to strategy, right? So J. Alexander's, they will only place their restaurant in a certain community based on the median income of that community. Chick-fil-A, they will only come to a certain community based on the median income of that community. So that's when you're thinking about strategy, that's how deep it goes. I'm a big nerd and I love data, right? So the census coming out is like, ooh, there's gonna be so much new information for me to look at, right? So, but seriously, right? So when that comes out, my company, I have a staffing company and we're focused in the hospitality industry, right? So hospitality has a labor deficit right now. Staffing, the labor workforce participation rate in Detroit is at 53.4%. That is ridiculous, right? One of the worst in the country. So what do? We start a staffing company that focuses in the hospitality industry, right? So you know that you're in a community that's solving not one, but two problems. So I know we don't talk about data enough. There's not enough existing data, but it is absolutely necessary. And there are individuals here that are outside like SCORE and TechTown that can help you with finding data, analyzing data, and using that to make informed decisions. I just have one more question for you guys, and then we are going to answer some questions from the audience. So the power of the black dollar. So I'm going to read you guys some statistics that I got last week doing our Securing the Bag event. So dollars circulation comparison. The Asian community dollar it circulates fully in 28 days. The Jewish community is 19 days. The black community is 6 hours. So I want to ask this panel, and this is what happens when you got a panel full of millennials, right? Sitting on the phone texting. This panel about strategizing and activating the power of the black dollar in our community. What are some ways that we can start to strategize as small group, as business owners, amongst our peers to activate the power of this black dollar that clearly has so much power and value? What are some things that we can do?
I'll go first. I think it's really, really important, especially, as all of you, who are here, who are aspiring entrepreneurs, to make sure that we're adding value to our communities. Because the only way we're going to keep money in the communities is if we're adding value to it. If people don't have any resources or anywhere to go in that community, then that money's going to leave right out. And it's funny because, to be honest, when I bought the lounge, in my mind, like dollar signs was going off. And I'm like, I can make some money. I can do this. And I went into a business that had recently opened in one of our communities. And this place I paid $32 for a carryout, and they didn't even replace the ceiling tiles. There was holes in the floor. They put just a regular sign up, and they charged me $32, for a carry. And I'm in there almost disgusted. Like, I don't spend $32 at Benihana sometimes. You know what I mean? Where I'm getting like fine dining, and these people charge me $32 for a carryout, and they had a line. And so we're paying that, but we're not demanding anything from people. When we have to be conscious of where we're spending our money and require that people do more for us in our own neighborhoods, especially us as minorities that are opening businesses. We have to make sure that we're just really adding value to that neighborhood, because that's what's going to keep the money there. I used to own a sweet shop on the east side. It was called the Sweet Sweet. It was a real fun place. But when we were the first, it was on seven properties on the strip. It was only 2 that were occupied. The landlord owned the other property. It was a chicken place. And when we started fixing up the building, he actually came down like, why are you guys doing all of this? You actually finna put some new windows? You gonna take the bars down? This was the owner of the building. He like, don't do all of this. And I'm like, the only way I'm gonna get people to come over here is if we fix this up. And so it was actually directly across the street from Grosse Pointe. So it was on Mac, but it's set on the Detroit side. When the Grosse Pointe people started coming across, he couldn't believe it. He had been over there for 10 years. He said, I've never seen somebody cross that street. I said, they didn't have a reason to. We have to add value in our neighborhoods if we want people to come spend the money in it. And we have to demand that of ourselves. Like, we can't just tolerate anything going up in our communities and then spending our money there. Money is not going to stay in our neighborhoods if we're doing that. So I really just encourage everybody to challenge and demand more, because we spending our money and we're not requiring anything of people that we're giving it to.
Yes.
So I'm the bad guy here, because I hate the conversation about the black dollar. Because it ain't that much per capita. Okay. Back to our conversation about data. That $1.1 trillion sounds like a lot if one guy had it, right? Like if a person had it. But we have, what, 5 billionaires in America? Out of the whole list of 500 people, there's only 5 of them. Now, there are a couple of black folks with some money for sure. But I believe in the Robin Hood model of business. I'm going to go out in the suburbs, I'm going to charge them people all the bread that I could possibly get, and I'm going to hire a bunch of black people, and I'm going to pour that money into those black people so that they then can aspire. Because once again, everybody don't need to start no business. And I think we are harming people by pretending that the opportunity for black people to survive is that every single one of them needs to start a business. Who gonna take the money? Who gonna give them the money if they all broke? They just all starting a business, like every single human? And so the challenge becomes, how much money does exist? If you have a product that is $32 and the guy next to you has $37 and this person has $1,000, it's easier to get the $32. What we have to start thinking about is, to your point, it's not that black people will not spend money. If you're going to create the thing that is beautiful, like her lounge is beautiful, I've been watching it develop, it's going to be beautiful, it's going to be a community space, it's going to be fantastic. And knowing Portia, she's going to do it in a way that people in that neighborhood can afford to do it. Right. But if you're going to make like artisanal Gucci loafers and you're going to sell them for $500 a pop, you got to think about repeat patronage. How many times can someone consume your product? And so that becomes a challenge. So back to this point. If the income per capita of black people is super low, the solution is you have to hire a bunch of them, not charge a bunch of them. Right? You have to give a bunch of them money so that they can then have other things to do. That's how, when you look at how Henry Ford built up, right? You make a factory, you build a community around the factory. Then when people move into the factory, you have homes, and then people start to build businesses that are then fed by the primary conduit of wealth. And then the wealth begins to spread because there are conduits of wealth. And so you have to think about it as terms of system. We have been damaged by systems working against us to strip our wealth. We need to create systems by which we pour the money back in, and then it can retain, because we have focal lightning rods of wealth who are able to pull it from the greater whole. Because if we're worth $1 trillion, the national GDP is $19 trillion, the global GDP is $100 trillion. You could move $1 trillion, you could move the entirety of black wealth out of the global economy, not impacted at all, and double the net worth of all black people. And that is just the math. And so when I think about it, the reason why it frustrates me is because when people say, oh, we need to think about the black dollar, the answer is we need to charge black people more money. And that's not what happened. What black people do well is we supercharge culture. If you want to help black businesses, be as lit about it as you are about Gucci. And if you're super lit about it, then the other folks will show up. And then they will pay your friends, and then your friends will come up. And then you can do it again and again and again. That's how we create value, culturally.
Period. I love it. Right.
It's tough coming on that. No, so I think it's a combination of both. I think that one, we need to be conscious of. I think Portia's point is, you can't say any better. We have to create value for not just because we're black with a business or a product or a service, but because it's a great product or service and we happen to be black, right? And if we do that well, to Eric's point, then that transfers not just, there's this pride, emotion, attachment to this purchase, but then there's this repeated customer base. This is, I'm gonna come across the street from Grosse Pointe to Portia Sweet Shop because I just think that overall that this is a good product or service that I'm buying, and it transfers over, which then ties into Eric's economic point about how we increase access. But I go the opposite way I think anyone who, I think this gig economy is changing how we look at what business is, or how we historically have looked at business, right? So gig economy being you creating more value for what you do individually, and then having more control of what that looks like on a marketplace for you to have ownership and monetize that. And so the way that Uber isn't necessarily making people rich, but what it is doing is allowing people to monetize the vehicle in a way different than the vehicle just had a value taking me to and from the work, taking me to and from picking up my kids. Now it can has another value in between me doing those things, which then I can have more income from that. And I think that we all should be looking at ways of our intrinsic value. There's this whole push around data and who owns. One, we should own our data. Should that data itself provide us a value, a cost that we receive for that? And then how does that play to Ariel's original question around the dollar in the community? I think what I would do if I was sitting on that side is saying, am I creating a product or service that someone will want whether I was black or not, whether I was located in the city or not? And if so, once I feel comfortable that people would say yes, obviously to Ariel's point, using data to determine that, and Eric makes a good point of the data around margins, right? In certain businesses, 5 or 10% margins are phenomenal, right? In other businesses, they're terrible, right? And so you have to understand your space, know what your business margins are, and understand financial literacy. Understand, not that you have an idea, because that ties into how we track the wealth in the community, or how we grow the wealth in the community. But also really just make sure that you're looking at creating that product or service, hopefully in the community. But to Eric's point, the reason why we created with automotive it wasn't that we were only selling cars in Detroit, right? The cars were being sold all over the world, and the value was coming back to Detroit. If you look at what we see even with the Renaissance of Detroit around Quicken Loans, they're selling mortgages everywhere, right? And they're just intentionally spending their dollars in an area, or even charitable dollars. Oh, you want to do a PGA tournament? It has to be in Detroit. That we'll sponsor that only here. Like, being intentional with what you do is, to Eric's point, about the impact, but just making sure you want to be the best at what you do. Regardless, you just happen to be black. You happen to be a Detroit-based business. You happen to be all these other things, and doesn't mean you don't wear that as a badge. But you don't want the sale to be because you are black, right? You want it to be because your product or service stands up against any demographic and is best in class, and that creates a consistency, right? That creates legacy. That creates to the elders in business, like Sylvester in here. That's how you create sustainable pathways, because it wanes, right? If the sweet shop wasn't, which is why I understand what Portia's doing in her new business, if it's only a fad, then it's not sustainable, it's not consistent, and you can't really you can't really build a business, and so just make sure that in being intentional about how we spend, we're not asking people to buy products and services that we wouldn't want to buy, or that we're only buying because, they're Black. And then once we do that, let's be intentional where we hire, let's be intentional where we locate, and that creates the additional opportunities. All of us, Ariel included, are intentional about where we create pathways, right? And that is where you see the tenant who then becomes a homeowner, the employee that then can put their kid through college, or can afford health care, and all these other things, or just creating upward social mobility, which then creates the median income levels that allow us to attract, to Ariel's original point, the retail, or even for us, to support the Portia Powells of the world, to say, hey, I can model this in my community because the income level is there, because the businesses are creating value that is intrinsically valuable whether the person is Black or not.
Thank you. I just want to say I feel really cool because all these people are my friends, and this is amazing. But we want to take questions from you guys for about 10 minutes, and then it looks like lunch is here, and we'll transition into 2 of our workshops that we have. But if anybody has any questions, just please stand, introduce yourself, tell us your business name, and what question do you have, if any questions. Hello.
I knew it.
It needs no introduction.
I knew Sylvester was
A mentor in our community.
Jesus.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sylvester Hester, and we have a business downtown Detroit. We do manufacturing, supporting the automotive industry, aerospace, food, beverage, pharmaceutical, and also the government sector.
Sylvester Hester.
First of all, I just want to say congratulations. What an outstanding event, and you found 3 of the sharpest ones we have in our community. And thank you so much for that. And I hope you guys are all taking advantage of this right now. But I do have one very simple question, and that is, we all know you guys are there saddled and suited in your success. But give us a feel for that one big failure and how you overcame it. Okay? Thank you.
So I'll go first. My failure, I would say, the biggest failure that I had, and I don't know that failure is the right word, but it was the biggest learning experience, and I think it's what helped shape me for the things that I've done after. But actually at the sweet shop, I was renting the space. I was leasing the space from a landlord who actually just didn't have the same type of vision or dedication that I had, and I invested a lot of money into a building that I didn't own. And that's where, when we start talking about equity and things like that really come into place, because I had put so much into a business that it literally started driving business in the neighborhood. We started off as only 2 businesses on that block, and within 2 years, 2 other businesses moved in. Councilman Spivey was having networking, ice cream socials for the community there. I mean, it really started a movement in that neighborhood, but the landlord wasn't on board. And so then it was almost like I was working against him. He wouldn't contribute, or he wouldn't make any other investments into his building, so much so that it was an apartment above our space. The roof above the apartment collapsed. We came into the sweet shop one day and we were completely underwater. And he just like, I can't get a new roof. And so, legally we started, having issues. So I had invested so much into a business that I didn't own. And it was only, a building I didn't own. And it was only so much that I could take that building forward. So I ended up having to walk away from that business and leave it because of the conditions of a building, that I didn't own. So equity and things like that became very, very important for me. I had really had to make a decision on whatever my next business venture was. I either needed to be fully on board and this landlord had to understand it, or I would have to own the building before I could make any other, commitments like that. And that's not an easy thing to do. Owning a building is not an easy task. It can be very expensive, and there are other things that's associated with that. So that was a very big learning experience for me. I made a lot of capital improvement to a building that I ultimately ended up having to walk away from with nothing at the end.
Brian over here making money. I am the king of failing. Here's the thing. Entrepreneurship is an actual skill. Like if you like make things, you do things, there is a particular skill for entrepreneurship. I define it as the ability to create process that derive value over and over again. Right? That is like the entrepreneurial skill. And if you don't know what the skill is, you don't know what to learn. So oftentimes you just sit here and learn your craft. And that's what I did. I do branding, writing, speaking, design, blah, blah, blah. And I am good at all those things. No cap, you can ask anybody, I'm good at all those things. I am bad at business. Understanding the idea, I had a business partner who, everybody knows Marcus Burrell, like Marcus is a beast at processes and all that kind of stuff. And so I watched and studied and learned, and I'm much better at it now. I can whip your business into a shape and an order. But my biggest failure, I would say, is I wasted talent, other people's talent, by not being organized. So my company made $500 and some $1,000 one year, and I lost another $100,000 on top of it, which means my business folded up, which means I had to move places, I had to lay off my entire team, I had to do all this other stuff, right? And then like my mom died like within that same week, so I was through, right? It was like, oh, this is trash, I'm just a wreck, right? But the biggest failure, and there's a reason why I stick into failure, right? There's a lot of stuff like that was a learning experience. This was a failure. Because I didn't spend enough time learning the process of creating an infrastructure, I failed my team. They were not put in a position to be successful, and therefore my organization was not successful. And so when I think about, as an art person, because as art folks, we don't do processes, we just feel our way through it. And I felt my way into poverty, right? It was, and so our understanding, and my understanding, like right now I'm working for the city and running a business. My business started to take off right before I got offered this job. So what's actually happening is my business is growing and my opportunities have changed. And my business is running itself now in a way it should have been running when I was in the business every day. But I learned from those mistakes that I needed to spend all my business time on the processes to create opportunities for people who are better than me at all those things to be successful. And that is all my time. I open up Photoshop. Sometimes I don't even open my computer and do graphics anymore. I'll open up a thing and say more like this and close it. And now we are allowing people who are great to be great. And if you are going to be a business, here's the hard truth. If you are running a business, you're not going to be doing the thing you're passionate about as much. You're going to be creating infrastructures for other people to succeed at the things you're passionate about. And so that is the thing that I learned, and now I learn and I lean into that process the same way I learned how to do all the things that are my innate natural crafts. So that's my stuff. Over to the big boss.
I think failure business is a series of failures in which you recover from and pivot, whatever the term you want to use, and just analyze and just incrementally improve. That's my thoughts, right? For me, in this business, it was a very matter-of-fact failure. I think the very first failure of many was that I bought the first machine equipment from an older gentleman who had been in business, and it didn't really work, right? Like I bought it, I spent my hard-earned money, and I thought, it worked for the moment, but I wasn't really understanding how to really evaluate this product, and that could have been like catastrophic, because it really, to this day, hasn't. I'm still determined to make it work. And I bought it in a private sale, so I really didn't have a way to really go and, other than, he gave me some excuse, whatever. But that was the first big lesson for me. It was like, oh, I don't know enough about that side of it to even be making these purchases. So that was like I could transfer my anger against like, oh, he shouldn't have, well, he bought it. I just was unsophisticated, right? So that was the first failure. The next big failure was, it was even more important, was I had built this whole, and that's why business plans change. So be ready to change. So I had this extremely well detailed pro forma, and I was basing it on this huge market opportunity. There was all this federal money coming, and they were going to provide this opportunity, and I just needed to get 1% of the serviceable market that the larger competitors were not looking at, and I had all of these data points to support it. So data side things still happen. And then when I got into the space, I had won my first contract. and I was performing the work, and then the regulatory market changed the rules. And it's like, oh, well, we interpret that differently. We feel that you have to have been in this space for 5 years to participate. And it was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm already doing the work. It's like, oh, no, we're going to pay you for that work, but you can't get any more work from this huge opportunity, right? And so the failure was I hadn't developed a diversity strategy enough in the beginning. And so I had to quickly pivot, right? So I started spending less time trying to battle this to say, hey, this isn't fair, and saying, okay, how do I survive this business model? Because at this point, I had liquidated my equity from another startup and had went all in. I had just bought like a couple $1 million worth of equipment because I had the bad experience with buying a used machine. So I was like, oh, I'm never going to do that again. So I went and bought all this equipment. And so now I was on the hook for the delivery of something that I didn't even have. I didn't even have a contract to complete to the next after this thing was over. And so I had to very quickly figure out how to pivot from this failure, right? This failure to me was, so now I was unsophisticated in the actual purchase of machinery. I was now unsophisticated in figuring out how to operate in this market and how swiftly things could change that could affect my entire business model. So this pro forma that had everything detailed out that my banker loved never accounted for if the market went away. How would I survive? And that was, a very stressful failure, but it positioned me going forward to never depend on one thing again, right? So I had to quickly figure out from that failure. And then you got to understand the failure. So whatever, we're all as business people, and I'm still gonna have some more failures if we did this next year. I'm gonna have a new one to talk about because you don't stop failing at something. That's the thing about it, right? It's like, I don't care how successful someone is, how great, like the minute you start, you stop thinking you failed, that means you've lost sight of the business. Because it's always changing. Large Fortune 100 companies are finding their entire business models are upside down, right? Like Ford fired their CEO in the most profitable quarter ever, right? Like by definition, he did the very thing he was hired, and they felt he failed at something, right? So it could be different. I'm not, depending on the size of the business or the market, but you gotta be aware and cognizant that there are always present failures, and the success is like a string of defeat that you learn from and you adjust quickly. Yep. And it's going to manifest differently. And if you'll get better at it once you start realizing it early. And you'll get excited about it because you won't have this sit in this. I mean, because it can be extremely depressing and stressful, right? Especially for entrepreneurs of color, especially for Black entrepreneurs located in the inner city, because we already have all of these systemic challenges that we got to overcome to just get to the door. And to Eric's point about his grandmother, there's this fear of historically we have been redlined. We have even in our lifetimes there's been banks that are charging us more money with the same credit score, and the same. So it's like we have all of these reminders of that we just don't have the same set of requirements. And because of that, we personalize failure. And also, as a community, we don't look at failure the same. I would go to tech events, and it was like a bragging thing. Oh, we failed at this, and people would be like, "Wow, what did you learn?" You go to your grandmother's. You're like, you failed. You know what I'm saying? Like, you gotta go to talk. Go get a job. Yeah, you gotta go talk to. That's something we have to be comfortable with. Isn't just the talking. Eric mentioned about money, but it's really being comfortable with our failures and our vulnerability, right? Like, successes. Yeah, and so I can't get help on the pivot if I don't discuss the failure, right? Like, what did you, when you failed? And it may have been differently, but it could be that nugget, right? And so to me, it isn't just what did we fail, it's how we responded. And if, I try to speak to you, like if I was like, what would I want to get out of it? It's like, you have to be willing to respond to failure with a positive mindset. It doesn't mean you're not upset, frustrated, down. Those are real emotions that you need to have, but you have to be able to say, what am I going to learn from this, and how do I not make this failure, right? And I think that is far more important than the specific failures. It's the response, the analyzation of it, and the incremental growth in this like succession of defeats, right? And then you know they're going to happen, and now you change how you feel about them. Now when they happen, you're not thinking about this anxiety or this, oh my God, it's like, no, it's like, okay, it's a new opportunity to learn, and they should just hurt you less.
Can I just brag on my friend one time?
Yeah.
Because he did say he went through all that stuff and the market changed and all that stuff happened, and he is now the fastest growing demolition company in the state. Yeah. So let's get it one time, right? Because we do that stuff, but we also don't brag on ourselves. So I'm gonna get one time.
That's dope. I did not understand my cost of doing business. So staffing, cash flow is staffing, just cash flow crazy, right? My mentee Dejanay is in the front row. I'm speaking into existence. She's gonna have her smoothie truck, right? So your smoothie truck, how much is the cup? How much is the straw? How much is the fruit? How much is the blender? How much is the truck? How much is your marketing so people know that your truck exists? Marketing is a cost of doing business, right? So I did not fully understand my cost of doing business. So that is my quick 30-second failure. Question, we could take 2 more questions and then we'll just give a quick answer from the panel and then we'll eat lunch. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Wanda Evans. I own a local daycare here on Wyoming, Jones, Montessori Academy. This is Denise Lomax. Hers is Child Star Development Center.
Wow.
We've been in business 20 plus years.
Wow,
And
all
what
right, that's
we're
amazing.
finding now is staffing.
Oh,
The
yes.
work ethic is powerful. So I heard you say you had a staffing.
Yes.
So, yeah, if we could.
I'm at work right now, but yeah, I'm on my real job right now.
Right.
Yes, but yes.
But after 5.
And Detroit at work, I don't know if we made it here.
I've had 2 Girl Scouts from Detroit at work. They called in today.
We'll talk. Okay. Next question.
After 5. We're gonna talk after 5.
My name is Latar Holiday. I own a 56-passenger charter company.
Nice.
And the question that I have for you guys is that it's so rewarding to hear you guys say that you have mentors, which I feel like is something that's very hard to come across these days. How do you find a successful mentor? But I know at the same time, they have to make money too, so it's kind of like a catch-22. Like, yeah, I can help you, but it's going to cost you this amount. Like,
Well, I can't.
charging you
Yeah.
So you can solve that right there.
I'm gonna. Yeah. No. So I'll take a stab at that. One, true mentors aren't going to charge. Period.
Don't be listening
No.
to
That. And then also, like you have to, going back to, like, you have to understand when there's a valuable mentor or someone who you want to get their time. I just picked up a great one who owns the largest black electrical contracting business. I don't do what he does, but he owns the largest black in the Midwest, second largest in the country. And for me, it was like, how can I derive value for him? Not in a sense of paying him for something, but for most great mentors, it's about passing on knowledge or seeing what they sow into you. It has value. And if someone is trying to charge you, then that's a consultant, and that's not a mentor. And then you have to evaluate that, no different you would any other thing. But I really want to answer her about staffing, so the staffing thing though is on you. So I suffer from that, right? We all suffer from people in all spaces. Like there's this, and you have to look at it like a sports analogy. That once the late Kobe Bryant was saying, who was in an interview, he was talking about how Michael Jordan told him, you've got to a point where you can individually do everything, but now you have to figure out how to motivate the team. Right? It doesn't matter being a statistically best person. You can't win the championship if you can't. So if you're looking at it from the paradigm of it is them and it isn't you. Now that doesn't mean that it's your reason, your fault that they caught in. I'm not saying people have to be accountable, but you have to look at team building as what am I doing, right? Like, and whether it's from evaluation of hiring, whether it's from once they hire, like to make sure, and it's going to be different. Some of our staffs are motivated by the sheer dollar, right? Or just the, and being okay with how to, is your incentivization. And some of it's going to be the fulfillingness of the work or the impact or the path for growth. Or this job you have people that'll come and say, this job isn't demanding enough. Like, I don't want to be in a job where I can't be challenged. If the ownership or leadership is not looking at failure or productivity from the employee as only their initial responsibility, you'll never create a pathway. She can send you all the people in the world, but you'll never optimize that production if the ownership isn't on you. And I think that's something, a recent part. I used to subscribe to this ideology from Steve Jobs that I can only work with type A. Like, they had to be alpha and they had to be great. And that's great in a fantasy. That is literally great. That's great to say to a crowd who doesn't challenge you on that, right? But in our culture, we're very honest and authentic. And so the reality is everyone's not going to be an A player, right? Everyone's not going to be a B player. And some stages of growth are going to require a different workforce, and then you're going to have to attract different. In our space, when we started, it's very hard to get, we're a union shop, it's very hard to get people who were at larger companies to come work. It's like, we don't know if you're going to make it tomorrow. I'm like, I don't either, right? But as we grew and as the stability occurred, different people were applying for the same job. Right, like we have a trucking business, a part of Demo, and my initial truckers were high risk because it's like, But as we got, we started being able to poach from, and that'll happen as the business. But if anyone on this panel, and all of you are business owners, aspiring business owners, if you do not look at that employee as they're on my team, I'm trying to win a championship. And though I'm individually, because if you're the business owner, you can't do every job at the company, then that's problematic, or at least understanding your limitations and how to compensate for them. If I have to wreck the building, we're in bad shape. So I have to compensate for that in ways that, I can definitely put the numbers together and manage it. But you as an employer have to, I feel like I've been enough at these fairs as an entrepreneur who, I don't have another gig. I don't get a check, at all. I have to, if you're in that space, you have to be the champion of your team. You have to inspire them every single day to do the work, even if it's the most minuscule task. And I'm not trying to be cheesy, not saying you gotta be Gary Vee and with these speeches or whatever, but you have to find what that employee, because if you're not championing an employee, then why should they show up for you?
Yeah, exactly.
Because this is interesting. Because I want to speak to both of these points. I have a lot of mentors that don't know that they're my mentors. I've cobbled together a bunch of people, right? So that's the thing. I have all these people where I would just watch them from a distance and take pieces, because I'm a little insane, if you haven't noticed. And so what has happened is there was no person that fits into my type, right? I am a cussing hood rat dude that likes punk rock music and cartoons, and then rap music, and good rap music and ratchet rap music, like Cardi B, but like Nas, right? And so there's no person. And so I've cobbled together the pieces of people that make the most sense to me. Which is why it's interesting. When I talked about my failure, it was this point, right? I lost staff by not giving them the opportunity to succeed, and I hired people who didn't have the experience because I didn't have the money to pay people with my same experience. And so to your point about sometimes you cannot hire Steve Jobs and you cannot hire yourself because your market value is 150 grand. And if you ain't got 150 grand, well, you at the C tier. That's just where you at. But I have hired people with mental illness. I've hired people with no skill set. I hired a young lady who was working in JCPenney at the time. And I think you probably met her. She was their natural hair, really, really bright. She was a self-taught graphic designer, a self-taught photographer. She went to school for advertising. She worked at JCPenney's. I hired her because she stayed in my office and wouldn't leave. She was like, I'm gonna work until you decide to pay me. And so we did. Her last big piece was just in Times Square. She went to New York. We have another young lady who came in from Love Culture, and now she was working with one of the best black creatives in the world. He used to run all design and all stuff for GM. He was the highest ranking black person in automotive. And so what happens is I ask people, what do you want to do after this?
Right.
Because I'm only paying you 30, 40 grand, and I don't want this for you. So if that's the fact, how can I get you there? How can I build you a book so that when you leave here, you can go and get the bag?
Yep.
How can I give you the skill sets to do the thing you really want to do? Because let's keep it 100. If you over here, you ain't got it yet. But let me help you get there. And so pouring into people, because sometimes it's really not about the check all the time.
Right.
But when you pour into people and you believe in them, and some people do suck. I've fired people, right? But usually it's just a misalignment of value.
Okay, this is amazing. I'm going to get to your question, but Paige, we're going to go ahead and let the food, anybody who wants to get up and start grabbing food to grab food. I just don't want to look over these two folks that had questions, but we want you guys to be able to grab food if you would like. And then Miss Katrina Turnbow is here. We're getting ready to get into our Google session. And we have Detroit Development Fund here, who's also going to talk about preparing your business to receive funding. So we got a lot of great things that are happening, but I want to make sure we get to those questions. Really quickly, though, to the point of pouring into people and the staffing, we are in a gig economy, right? So I can literally go drive an Uber and be my own boss. I can go deliver Uber Eats and be my own boss. So coming to work for you is now actually like almost a favor in a way. So we have and we're in hospitality. So when we're thinking in our staffing company, I have to tell my team, be careful how we're talking to people, how we're investing to people. Understand that there are barriers to work to be able to get to, how am I going to get my child care? How am I going to get my transportation? What is my uniform? So as an employer, that is very important for us to understand that there are significant barriers for those individuals to get to work to us. So is working with you a happy place? And would you enjoy working for you? And that's what my team has to think about as a staffing company constantly. So I saw when you guys filled out in your registrations that staffing was one big thing as well as funding. And so we'll talk about those as the day goes on. But we have one or two more questions real quick, and then we're going to give like one answer. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, y'all, but yes.
Hi, my name is Rosemary Moore. I'm the president and CEO of Sharp & Associates Insurance Agency. So what I wanted to talk to you guys about, with my business, I feel like I've taken it as far as I can take it as far as branding is concerned and getting the agency name out there in the community. So talk to me about how you guys, once you move from the place that was just you, where it was just you, where you took that next step to, get yourself out there.
Eric, you want to talk about branding?
I guess I do on the branding company. So there are two levels to this conversation.
You got 60 seconds.
There's two levels. A, you might have to pay for it. B, right? Like, and that's the thing. People really don't like paying for the graphics and the branding stuff because they've gone so long without paying for it, but you might have to pay for it. But what I would do is I would consult with somebody who's really great first. So that's the cheat way. Graphic designers are not brand strategists, so they'll make you something that's cool, but that doesn't mean it's going to help your business. Right. Same way with marketing. But if you find somebody who's a really great marketing or brand strategist, it may be cheaper to say, hey, can you consult with me for 4 or 5 hours on what I would need to do? Then you take that to a graphic designer and a marketing person who's lower cost and say, this is the plan, execute this. So that is how I would do it if you're building up to capacity.
And I'll say it from the verse because he actually does it and I don't. Know your story of what you're trying to tell, right? So the more you know your story, the better you can give direction to the people that you're trying, and that's how you can evaluate, is this person a good fit, right? You got to know where your brand fits, like understand the story you're trying to tell or how you're trying to show up, and who you're trying to say it to, and know what your advantage is. Our space, I don't have 3 generations, 50 years, these huge projects to sell as my brand, so I have to sell the diversity, the uniqueness, the representation. Like you have to understand to who you're trying to sell that to, which parts of your brand you need to highlight. That's what I would say.
Perfect. Was there one more? Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I got you.
Really, my name is Huey Gray, and I represent the Detroit Regional Chamber. I want to commend the city and all of you folks up there with feeding this information. And I just want to add the Detroit Regional Chamber as just another avenue of exposure. If you're trying to brand, to look onto our website and look at membership as well. As the Detroit Regional Chamber has been existing over 100 years, with over 3,000 members, with almost 75 events a year that help local businesses to Fortune 500 companies, nonprofits, with that exposure, that access to resource that I think all of you are speaking about. And look me up, Huey Gray again, and see if we can be another avenue. There's 101 ways to skin a cat in this, and I think they're producing ways, and I think the regional chamber can be another one for it.
Huey has volunteered to be on our next panel. Thank you. Yeah. We have one more question here.
Afternoon, everyone. My name is Fletcher Daniels. I'm on my second business. I've had a failure on the first one, but I'm on my second business now. And I'm actually interested in finding out, because this business is something I do as my day job. I'm an educator, and I'm looking to turn that into my own personal, either business or nonprofit. My concern is I'm going into a space that I've never been in academia, and so I don't know how to start or where to start. And I want to know, how did you all figure out where to start or how to start?
So I guess my question would be, so you're in this space right now. So something has triggered a need for you to make that entrepreneurship. So something happened where you like, I need to make this into a business. So that thing is where you start, because whether it was a need, whether it was, phone calls, I'm a banker by day. My banker phone doesn't stop. So now people are like, well, you should be a banking consultant, and I'm just like, I barely want to be a banker, I can't do both. But something happened to pivot that, need. So start there, and then is there enough of that need for you to sustain and actually create, a whole company around it?
And I'll echo that. I think some of the greatest businesses are businesses that people find that are from while they're at work, right? Like some product or service that the company you work at is not providing. And then figuring out, while, obviously as long as it doesn't conflict with what you're supposed to do with your job, you're not getting in conflict, but figuring out what that, if this company could have this product or service, this would change their business, right? How you show up, the performance, how you do at work, they could be your first client, right? One of my really good friends, he started a business with software around, in construction, how you track the documents. And it's called Logistics. And Justin was able to get his job to be the Blaze contract, to be the first client, because he solved a problem for them. And they loved it. They're paying for it. He's got me and a bunch of other people. But it was like he solved a problem that he only would have known had he been doing that job. So some of our best entrepreneurship opportunities are there where we're at work right now. It's like, I just hate this. If they did, if you come home and you complain about it enough, and enough people that you work with are complaining, there may be a real pain point that becomes a business. And that's what you should look at, in that case, I would say that.
One last thing, just to that point, because I know you said whether you want to turn it into a business or a nonprofit. I just want to echo this, because I think this is just undersaid at times. Starting a nonprofits almost need more money than profit. Yeah. So people think that you can make a nonprofit and money's just going to appear. That is more difficult than running a for-profit company, and they still need the same amount of money coming in to operate. Nonprofits still need employees. Nonprofits still need resources, space. Yep. That stuff costs money. So when you're thinking about nonprofit, understand that it still needs to make money, because it still has to sustain itself.
And to add to Portia being the VP of Chemical Bank should say, it is far more hard. I'm sorry, TCF now. Thanks for the correction. She should also add to that, it is extremely more hard to capitalize a nonprofit than a for-profit business. So even on top of that, it's gonna be harder to get the money you need, because you can't provide equity or shares or things in which people want to secure against in the same way. So be very careful. Not to say we shouldn't have nonprofits, but the education around, there's extremely different business cases and extremely different capitalization structures.
Yeah, you can do a little both. I have both. But Girl Scouts model, I always talk about Girl Scouts model, almost every event. 75% of all of the community impact work that they do are funded by the cookies. just the cookies that the Girl Scouts sell. So finding that business model that may feed into your social mission. There's also new structures like the L3C. I don't know if that really even makes sense anymore, but there's ways that you can have you can structure your business to show that you're doing social impact work. Or you can start with the for-profit and then start your nonprofit arm, and knowing that your for-profit is going to fund your nonprofit. Okay.
One thing I just want to add, I know
Yup.
you look, but no, because
They don't listen.
this is important to what you said is that if you look at philanthropy, the largest philanthropies are funded by for-profit or wealthy people, endowments, right? So being really great at business gives you the capital to then go support the things you want to support, right? So that I just wanted to add that,
Thank you. Let's give it up for our panel. Some of the resources that we have here, so we talked about mentorship, especially from my sisters. We have Michigan Women Forward here. They actually gave me my first microloan to be able to start my business. So Michigan Women Forward are here. SCORE, they will sit down with you and assign you a mentor. They are here as well. They sat down with me and went through my business strategy with me just to clean a few things up. So make sure you guys utilize the resources that are outside. We are a little bit over time here with our amazing panel and you guys' great questions. What's gonna stay here is our Google session. So Ms. Katrina Turnbow, who is also a great friend, a Sarwar of mine, a Sarah. So she'll be here in this room. If you are interested in the preparing to get your business funded, that is downstairs. And our team will help with directing you to get downstairs as well. And that's great. Make sure you guys just utilize all these great resources. Thanks for being here.
If you're someone who maybe, I mentioned vacant lots. I'm getting a lot of businesses coming in for outdoor children playscapes or museums or art exhibits, those kind, or just musical spaces. Those are businesses, whether you're growing mushrooms or snails, those are businesses. Those are the kinds of things that I want you to be creative in knowing that you can do. Also, if there's some vacant buildings that you cannot completely renovate the entire structure, you need to come see me. We can tactically permit portions of your space so you can do pop-ups or you can test the market in retail corridors. That's what I'm here for to help you with today.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Pierre Berton. I'm the Vice President of Small Business Services at the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation. We are the Chief Economic Development Agency for the City of Detroit. We're a nonprofit. We've been around for about 45 years now. We help businesses of all sizes. So on the small business front, we help startups. Motor City Match is a program that's ran out of our house, along with the Motor City Restore program. For existing businesses, we have programs like the District Business Liaisons that can help you with any sort of red tape issues you're having in terms of navigating the city. So to help guide you through the permitting process or to help get, help you receive your business license if you need one, we have resources that are available for that. We also are one of the main conveners or thought partners in the small business space. And what that means is you have a lot of different needs as a business owner or an entrepreneur, whether it's tapping into the available financing. We can introduce you to CDFIs and traditional lenders in the space that are actually lending to Black business owners right now in the city, in all of our neighborhoods. We can link you up if you're an existing firm. I think a gentleman over here, you mentioned that you have a property that you've kind of, you renovated the outside of it and you were trying to get it updated on the Google Maps. If you were looking to expand your business into another spot within the city, tax abatements come through our house. So, we can link you up with the real estate team to see what's available for you along that. So we really have a lot of resources that are available that we'd be more than happy to share with everybody.
Good morning. My name is Boise Jackson. I'm the head of procurement here for the city of Detroit. My responsibility is to award contracts to the selected companies throughout the city of Detroit. We spend the billions for different goods and services throughout the city in all kinds of categories. So my responsibility includes all of that. So why am I interested in this organization and this process today? I want to teach, train, and educate you more on how to do business with the city of Detroit. We have a lot of good contracts out there and a lot of opportunities for Detroiters that are interested in obtaining a contract with the city and doing work with the city, hiring Detroiters, and becoming a very big voice in some of the goods and services that we handle throughout the city. I want to recognize a couple companies. Jock Mullen from Ace Petroleum, will you stand? Sylvester Hester from Vitec, will you stand? And I saw Brian Mckinney a few moments ago, who was standing up when James Foster was talking to him from Guyanga. Now, why am I identifying those 2 or 3 people? Not too long ago, these people were not companies that were doing work, had million-dollar contracts with the city, multi-million dollars. They have gotten it because they sat where you are currently sitting, trying to be interested in doing work with the city, going to CRIO, getting certified, and then obtaining a contract. I want you all to give them a hand, because when the doubters were saying it's hard to get a contract with the city, they challenged big companies, not small companies. Both of them challenged companies that had general revenues in excess of $100 million and more. But they won the contract based on their commitment to the city, obviously providing a plan that got good goods and services and doing it on time to support the citizens of the city of Detroit. And I commend them too, and there may be others in here that I don't recognize, but this is where I want to get to all of you, to get an opportunity to bid on contracts in the city and get you a contract that you would say, there's no way I'm gonna get that. But these are the same kind of things that they said, no, I wanna try. They collaborated, working together, partnering with somebody else, and was able to bring it home. And these are the kind of things me and the panel up here are very, very interested in building on more, okay? And that's why I'm here.
Good afternoon. My name is Amanda Saab, and I am the Business Opportunity Program Manager in the Civil Rights Inclusion Opportunity Department, who has hosted this wonderful event with my Deputy Director and teammates. And I'm here because I want to get your business certified as a Detroit-based business. So when you're going to contracting and trying to get those bids with the city, we can give you equalization credits and recognize that you are Detroit-based business, Detroit headquartered business, minority and woman-owned business, so we can help make that an equal playing field and get you those contracts.
Black voter turnout dropped in 2016, even as a record number of Americans cast ballots in the 2016 presidential election. Not this time. Not this time. Despite voters being motivated overall at higher levels than in the past, they're still predicting another 10% drop in African American votes. And if you look at the trends, traditionally, that means black men. We're talking about 5 million votes. But it doesn't have to be that way.
Not this time.
To my brothers who are watching this video, no longer can we allow our voices, our concerns, our communities to be ignored. Not this time. Many other marginalized groups have begun to see positive change in their communities because they decided to organize and use one of the most effective tools available for policy change. That's voting. Join us as we turn up the volume and let our voices be heard on Election Day. If you don't want to stand in line, absentee voting is now easier than ever.
Grails are, in the sneaker world, is what we try and get our hands on. That one shoe that you go so hard for it. You know, you look for it as much as possible. We try and get it You might not even wear it half the time, or you might put it on and you might rock it all day, every day.
Opening night is Saturday, February 15th from 7 to 9 p.m. Visit thecarcenter.org for more information.
The wealthy have a whole range of tax credits available to them. Lower and middle income people have one. It's the Earned Income Tax Credit. The wealthy have got high-powered accountants and lawyers. The people of Detroit also have high-powered assistants. It's Karen Arrow and Kathleen McDonald in the Accounting Aid Society and Wayne Metro, where there are volunteer accountants who will help you with your taxes and make sure you get every dollar. They are your helpers to get everything that you're entitled to.
I did it last year at Focus Hope. This is just a different site, but it was very helpful and convenient. I got a good check. I actually got more than what I thought I was going to get. So that was good. I was able to do some things with that.
Visit claimyourrefund.com to check your eligibility and then call 211 to schedule your free appointment. We asked the dedicated team of volunteers from the Accounting Aid Society and Wayne Metro why they chose to volunteer their accounting services to the citizens of Detroit.
Well, it's just a good feeling to be able to help people. You know, a lot of people need a lot of help, and this is one way I can give back. And you know, I'm really comfortable with numbers, so doing taxes is an easy thing for me. I'm retired, so I have the spare time, so it all works out good.
We do go more in depth, and we do have different certifications and different access to different things to where we can pull. We have more leniency with pulling information versus the self or personal preparer.
So the way I look at it, if I do 4 tax returns in a day, that's about $1,000 that I've saved people. And if I do that 10 weeks in the tax season, that's $10,000 that I've saved people. I can't give away that much money, but I can work off that much money, and it just feels great.
Visit claimyourrefund.com to check your eligibility and then call 211 to schedule your free appointment.
Grails are, in the sneaker world, is what we try and get our hands on. It's that one shoe that you go so hard for. You know, you look for it as much as possible. You try and get it. You might not even wear it half the time, or you might put it on and you might rock it all day, every day.
Opening night is Saturday, February 15th from 7 to 9 p.m. Visit thecarcenter.org for more information.
We know we are not going to bring the violence down to the levels the people of this city deserve by doing the same things. And so in early 16, the chief and I started with 8 gas stations and said, what would happen if you monitor them real time at police headquarters? And of course, the response for those first 8, the incidents went down, business went way up.
I love the Project Greenlight. My customers love it. It makes everybody feel they're in a better environment when they come in here. I feel like criminals are getting caught quicker, whether they're committing the crime in the green light location or near the green light location. The police are getting a better chance of identifying who the criminals are because of the green light.
We understand how bad this gun violence is. We're not going to put up with it, but we're going to attack it with strategies that work. Green light is working.
This is the big thing in policing today.
I am so sorry I'm late. I was at home filling out my 2020 census form.
Girl, you did that?
Like, why does it matter?
The results of the census count will help us get funding for vital programs and services that we all use every day.
Like what?
Well, all our kids eat free lunch at school, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Well, the census count will help get free lunch for the year.
Anything else?
We all want to feel safe at home, right?
Of course.
Definitely, yeah. Well, grants for the police and firefighters is also determined by the census count.
Even money for Medicaid, food assistance, and student loans depends on you submitting your census form.
So, how do you fill it out?
Well, you can do it online or over the phone. It's less than 10 questions, and it just takes 10 minutes to complete. And that 10 minutes determines the results for the next 10 years.
Oh, wow. Well, ladies, that sounds like a New Year's resolution to me. In 2020, we will be counted. Cheers to the census.
Cheers.